Fill out the form or something like that. They leave at 6 a.m. They come back at 3:30 talking about I haven't eaten anything since 5 o'clock because, for whatever reason, they don't know that they're on free lunch, they don't have the money or that type of thing. And I'm not even sure if schools are aware of who is homeless or who, for whatever reason, they just and they won't say anything. They won't go to anybody and ask, can I eat? Can I do that type of thing? So it's just as far as policy, not getting into anybody's confidentiality or anything, but I feel like predominantly a lot of our kids, especially the first week they're there, 5 days later they'll say, I haven't eaten at lunch in 5 days because I haven't had any money or I haven't been able to do it. And you ask them if they talk to anybody, it's always no. The other thing is about, and I don't know about the EBT being accepted at so many like gas stations and something like that, and I don't know if there's any policy about, I know there's some policy about what you can get, but I also know that there's a lot of stuff, especially at like gas stations, that aren't the best for getting EBT and that type of thing. And then the flip side of that, because I was on EBT for a year when I did AmeriCorps, is talking to grocery stores about when somebody's on EBT. And just from my personal experience, I don't know how many dirty looks I got when I went to the fish counter, when I went to the deli counter and got something fresh and somewhat expensive or what have you, and didn't get like bulk whatever on my EBT card. That they looked at me like, what are you doing? But I think that's something that does happen a little bit, and just about grocery store culture. And I mean, I go to a regular grocery store, but still, I felt like I did meet some resistance when I tried to be healthier or tried to do, just buy things that maybe, I guess weren't EBT worthy, I'm not sure. The other thing is about I'm a big proponent of eating all the time, and I like having dinners for people. One thing we do at Safe Place is, like, we have Thanksgiving dinner for, if you've ever been there, you can come and have Thanksgiving dinner. What we try to do is have something that you might not eat, but you've seen, but you don't know how to prepare. Because, I can't take a chance and spend $12 on mangoes if I've never ate mangoes and I don't know when they're ripe and I don't know what you do with them. But having something like that they see how it's prepared, they taste it, and then you can kind of go from there and have suggestions. Because sometimes I think that's a barrier. Is you see it, you don't know what it is. Anecdotally, all the time I go to 28th and Broadway, hummus is always on clearance, broccoli is always on clearance, vegetables are always about to go bad. That's why I go down there, because they're always there and they're always about to go bad because nobody buys them. But having people have gateways to figure out what stuff is, because I don't want to spend my money on something I'm not going to eat or don't know how to do anything with.
Thank you so much.
Community opportunities to teach people how to cook and prepare home-cooked meals.
Okay, up here in the back.
Sabina Singh from Jefferson County Public Schools. And Anthony, I just wanted to piggyback on what Ms. Freeman, you mentioning Humana Foundation and the Healthy Magnet Schools. We have an advisory board in JCPS for Healthy Magnet Schools and their wellness program. We have Dr. David Allen on there. We've got Humana Foundation, Virginia Judd, and JCPS representatives that are making all these decisions for these policies around healthy schools and that magnet program. And that might be a great way to tap into it and great resources. Kelly Dearn-Smith from the Louisville Water Company mentioned that she goes out to schools and she will educate children on how much sugar is in soda, high C, juices, and also educate them on a curriculum around water and how advantageous it is to drink water. And they're at elementary schools, middle schools, so tapping into those types of resources would be great.
Can you get us?
I can.
Thank you. What I'd like to do at this point, we're going to hear from the Jefferson County Public School System, Mr. Stephen Imhoff, who is the chairman of the board, Mr. Dan Porter, who is the representative of District 1 of the school district. I wanted to ask a question and a pointed question to Mr. Imhoff, so if you could bring the mic up this way. I happened to visit in the health and wellness track on yesterday, and the discussion focused on what happens in the school system around curriculum with physical education, personal health, and nutrition. because some of us remember coming through that we were required to take PE, we were required to take personal health and some other classes. So the question is, in today's curriculum, are those standards in place that every student has to be taught these things? Kind of what is the current condition around that? And then you had another comment you wanted to add.
Well, I know that because of the 6 hours, for the school system, for the day, and the other things that we feel that we need to teach for the CATS test, et cetera, unfortunately, arts and things like health and PE are more on the downside lately. I will say this, that, for example, my little girl, we call her a little girl, she's now 10 years of age and goes to Field Elementary where they have a health and PE instructor. And so during the day they do PE. Now and actually I remember when I was a kid we were outside a lot and they do a lot of their stuff in the gym. So they do instruction there, but again it's also the SBDM and the principal that decide to juggle their schedules at different schools. I think they do a real good job at the field. And for example, my her now 13-year-old brother and she last year it's always been at lately, it used to be at Wagner High School, now at Eastern High School, where all these kids go out there lately to eat once a year at Eastern High School, and they do all these 10 or 12 running, track, throw a javelin, and all that kind of stuff. So they do a lot of that. I just think some schools do a better job of that. Real quick on the lunches, I'm on the wellness committee, and Linda Duncan is also on the wellness committee. And I got on there about 8 years ago when I started trying to get, and was a little bit successful in getting rid of soft drinks in our schools and the vending machines until after school was out. My high school principals didn't like that idea, but we did it. But we are now with we're starting a program where you start a little at a time, where one school, we don't know which one yet, will really focus on more of the, really fresh local fruits and vegetables, because you get fruits that are come from California or Florida, and they might not be quite as fresh as they should be. So we're working on that. My little girl volunteered for whatever reason just a couple of days ago. There's a program called Packs Now in our schools, and I think it's from the Penny Round. There's a coalition now, the Penny Round part of the Commonwealth, who runs that and has information, written materials on healthy, what is healthy and what is not. And my little girl comes home and tells me, Dad, that's not healthy, and this is healthy, that's not healthy. So she's getting some of it from Mom and Dad, but a lot of it from school. So yeah, we need to focus more on the health and PE. I don't know that they climb the rope to the ceiling of the gym like I did. I don't know if the high schools do that anymore. But I hope I answered your question.
Yes. And I think it's good to know that there are programs that address it. I guess we're looking at it from a policy level in terms of whether it is applied universally throughout the system.
Because of that question, I'll try to get an answer to that.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to move into our next track. I know we've got hands up. I did promise they're here, and then we're going to go into our next track.
I just didn't want to go by without saying this. I'm Amy Webb, Jefferson County Public Schools, but the point I'm going to bring up has to do with another program. The Harriet B. Porter Cancer Education and Research Endowment that's funded through the Brown Cancer Center and works with the Kentucky Cancer Program, puts on culinary institutes with churches, and several churches are involved in that, learning how to prepare healthy Sunday dinners. There's actually one this morning at Sullivan. So that's another place to plug in, and the endowment is going to do a little bit more to reach into neighborhoods and other community programs. So that's an important place that I hope the Health Issues Committee plugs into. Thank you. I see some of the folks who have been involved in that here.
Okay, we go to the back row. We've got the gentleman in the cap and Ms. Brown.
Can I make a suggestion that all of these different charities and endowments be collected and put in one central location so everyone can have access to the information?
Absolutely.
Good morning and good afternoon, if I'm in right timing. My name is Andrew Baston, and I'm from the Bahamas, a student at U of L. And I'm just wondering, with the panel and everybody here, when you discuss education and the whole works about education, are you factoring in how the other world, outside world, like the third world, England and Canada, how are their school system functioning and how are their students doing versus the US students? If you have, then I'd like to say that I've heard a lot about the bus system and the health and food and so forth, and it brings to mind that there are some kids in the Bahamas and the other Caribbeans, they don't have this lunch system, they don't have this bus system. Most of them have to walk for miles to go to school, and if they don't take their lunch with them, then they'll have to eat when they get home. Another thing that I've been hearing most of all is getting the parents involved. The parents are from childhood involved with the students. The parents, you don't even have to have a PTA meeting. The parents are there at school and they're really involved with their kids' education. Another thing that I'm hearing too is that for the most part, the emphasis on the teachers. In the Caribbean, it's the students. The students are ultimately responsible from when they get to school to graduation. It is their responsibility. The emphasis is placed on the kids. When you go into high school there, and I'll give up the mic in a minute, when you get to high school, or even from primary to junior high to high school, there's a system in place called the GEE, General Education System. Whereas each student knows from childhood that at the end of the graduation of high school, you have to have a certain education. You have to have qualifications stating that you have done all the schooling and you pass these general certificates. These certificates comes down from England or some are from Canada, and they are curriculums in place for every student, regardless of what school, whether private school or government school. They have to pass these certificates, these tests, in order to be qualified as a high school graduate. So I'm just wondering, are you comparing the other outside world, like I say, functioning as far as education, when you talk about the child with 55,000 degree, are you considering what the outside world is doing, who don't even have the privilege of what you're offering these kids? And I just want
I think that's an excellent question that we need to consider, and would invite you to stay involved with us to help us explore that, because I can say, to my knowledge, that hasn't been even talked about. Ms. Brown, and then we're going to wrap up and go to the next segment.
Hello, everyone. My name is Arlisa Farley Brown. I work with Jefferson County Public Schools. I just wanted to share with you that several years ago, I was a part of the team that worked with the Heiser Clinic and the Tappan and Fitness, and served on the board with Kelly Deering Smith. And we would go into the schools and do fitness assessment with the Heiser Clinic team, as Sabina just shared with you. So some of that is still going on. We also have the practical living specialist in our district, Donna Benton, who works closely with that program. And we used to have pretty much a 3 or 4 day professional development with all the practical living team representatives in our schools, talking about healthy food, healthy eating, and exercise. And I also was a part of the team that went into the schools to do the fitness assessment with the children to assess the level of where they are and where they need to be in terms of their BMI. So a lot of that's still going on within JCPS. So that's one of the other programs at the Heiser Clinic that you can tap into as well.
In place, but I think I need to maybe clarify a couple of things. One, on a statewide basis, I think the most important statewide policy that you need to pay attention to is the implementation of Senate Bill 1. Senate Bill 1 changes the paradigm not only of what a kid should know coming out of high school and being admitted to college, but it also changes the paradigm of the teacher education program and what it will be required of an individual graduating from a teacher education program to be certified to teach. The Educational Professional Standards Board is, as we speak, changing the requirements for a teacher to be certified. Senate Bill 1, through the Common Core standards that are being implemented across the Commonwealth of Kentucky, is changing the requirements for a student to graduate and be called college ready. The courses that students need to take to be college ready are being redefined. And in terms of students with developmental needs, which you call remedial education, a student who is identified as being in need of developmental education is basically a statistical process based on the student's performance on the ACT. Okay? And that is a common cutoff score across the public colleges and universities. Each college and university is given permission to set its minimum admission standards, but whether or not a student is prepared to take a credit-bearing course is established based on how that student performs on the ACT. And it's the same at the University of Kentucky as it is at the University of Louisville, as it is at Kentucky State University, as it is at Eastern, Western, Northern, and Murray. And whether or not a student is going to be successful in college is not really determined by the cutoff score, but rather whether or not an institution is prepared and have programs in place to assist a student once identified as requiring developmental education. If they have programs in place that will assist that student to remove those developmental education requirements and then be moved into a credit-bearing course. Last thing I want to say to you is that I am not aware of any legislation passed by the Kentucky General Assembly that identify where a student might enroll. There is, however, a minimum admission standard that every institution has that may or may not allow a student to be admitted and enrolled at a public institution. Parents ought to consider one thing, and that is if there are developmental needs, it may be more appropriate and least costly if you remove those developmental needs at a community college where tuition is less than enrolling your child in a four-year institution, paying extremely high tuition for courses that do not count towards a degree. And there are in place requirements between at least the public four-year institutions and the two-year institutions, a transfer agreement that allows a student to remove those developmental education needs at a lesser cost and transfer as a full-time student once those developmental needs are removed to a four-year residential institution to get a degree. Now, all of this information can be found on the website of the Council on Post-Secondary Education, or you can go to the Kentucky Department of Education, and you can find this information on the website. It's not a secret.
Leader, for those individuals, Devon Holt, who has a radio program this morning, and Rob Jordan, who had another commitment, couldn't be here. So John, if you would.
Thank you, Kevin. As Kevin mentioned, I wasn't prepared to be here, so I hope I can fill the shoes that I've been requested to fill. But yesterday's discussion started out with everyone. In fact, we had a nice diverse group of about 8 people, plus our 3 facilitators, scribe. But we started out talking about the 55K. And I think to a person, it was agreed that that concept and that focus is an excellent focus. But we quickly diverted from talking about that as one person asked a question And the question was, are we just talking about four-year degrees? And it was explained that no, there's also associate levels and things of that nature. But the conversation continued to shift to other focuses, and I'll share with you what some of those focuses were. There was discussion about vocational training, teaching entrepreneurship at JCPS. Also, there was discussion about technical associate degrees, as I mentioned before. School-to-work partnerships was discussed. Apprenticeships was discussed. In fact, there were some there in our audience who had actually gone through apprenticeship while in high school years ago and found that apprenticeship to be very integral to their overall education and readiness to go into the workplace. We talked about school-to-work programs, which is somewhat similar. There was discussions of mentorship and the importance of that informal education as part of the equation. We talked about on-the-job training, microloans, helping students to develop a career passion. We talked about understanding office protocol. I think you're getting the picture. We talked about a lot of things, and it was in a way like herding cats, you know. We never got to a point of clear policy, but maybe that's the beauty of the discussion. The conversation continued as we talked about businesses and what businesses need to focus on in addition to education. There was a comment about businesses must be ready to work with people, and the idea was that you gotta, if you come into a community, business need to sort of accept those workers. But the conversation continued to evolve to the point that we talked about the idea that, if you bring on people who are not ready, that's like driving a car that has a flat tire. You're not going to get to where you need to be as a business entity or as an organization. It doesn't matter what type of organization. In fact, just my own thought here is that, if Charlie Strong, Rick Pitino were to bring in subpar athletes, we get very, very upset. We would feel like, boy, they're cheating us. So I think the same is true when it comes to employment. You must have people who are ready. We went on and talked about some other things like breakdown of traditional institutions, things like marriage, breakdown of the family, even the church influence on lives. So it was a very robust discussion, very spirited. We did not come out with any clear policies, but I woke up about 5:30 this morning, and this conversation was on my mind because there was a lot of very good intent here. And what I was hearing is that we've had excellent insight from those who are in the educational system and the populations that they're touching. But I think part of what was being said is that there are others outside of that spectrum that we should not lose sight of. In fact, Reverend Jerry Stevenson was talking about the loss of males aged 16 to 24. You will not find them in the educational system. You will find them out in the world. But when an employer comes into a community, they want to know about your overall readiness. And we cannot just ignore those groups. There was a young lady there, Shirley Mormon, and she's actively seeking work. I mean, she has had a great work history, but due to physical limitations, she's not able to do what she used to do. She drove for Tark, I believe, so she was a bus driver. So she's now having to get retooled to do other things. So I think the epiphany that I sort of woke up with this morning is that we probably need more data in this area. I mean, ultimately, what we're talking about is that all the educational efforts are going to lead us up to this point of whether or not people are ready. So ultimately, we're talking about job readiness, and not only are we talking about those within the educational system, but we're talking about those who've been veterans of the workforce. We're talking about those who've been sort of eliminated from the workforce. Maybe I shouldn't say eliminated, but they're isolated from the workforce, in many instances due to their own reasons. But I really think that as we go forward, we need more data to understand those outside of the educational system. We also need to think about the point that the young lady made here, the old WIFM, what's in it for me? That's a value proposition. From a business viewpoint, when you invest in something, you want to know that you're making a good investment. You want to know that there's a value to be gained. But I think for each of us as individuals, we want to know the same thing. So we have to sort of educate people in a way that they understand it's not just about getting a degree. I remember as a young person, I used to think, oh, well, if I get this degree, there's magic. It's not that. That degree will get you up to the starting line. You know, when we go to a race, go to a game or whatever, you know, there's a lot of practice that goes into it. And all that work is just to get you to the starting blocks. It does not guarantee anything once the gun sounds. So we must be ready, and we must be ready at multiple levels. I've taken some liberties here in terms of making some interpretation, but I will say, I guess in reflection, maybe I'm a bit qualified. I've been involved in employing people for the last 35 years in the educational systems, chemical industry, automotive industry. There's a little company in Georgetown called Toyota. I staffed that facility, their North American headquarters. And more recently, I've been involved in economic development efforts in bringing Dharma Construction here from California. And so, you know, I do feel like maybe this was the overall point that this group was saying, is that there are those outside the educational system that we must not forget. We must find ways to engage. And I'm sure it's not going to be an easy road, but I don't think what we're talking about here is easy. This is a massive undertaking, and we're going to have to think out of the box. We're going to have to figure out how to keep lives from just being lost, how to engage people in productive ways. So I hope that those comments are helpful.
That was excellent.
Kevin,
Thank
I
you.
do appreciate you asking me, and thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you for allowing yourself to be drafted this morning, and I'm sure Senator Neal would say you are drafted for the long haul. So thank you for that, John. Others who may have been in that track who would like to add a reflection, or should there be just a general comment? We'll take one or two. We're not going to take a lot. Okay.
No, ma'am. But it correlates.
I wasn't in the group, but what I wanted to say to you all is kind of correlates between the last segment and this one. I don't think I've heard anyone talk about conflict resolution, and most of you all that know me know that that's what I teach. And just this week, we've had at least 3 murders in Louisville. Y'all don't want to talk about it. I don't want to talk about it, but I have to tell you that the young people that we're talking about serving, they live next door, they go to school with, they know these people. They had a young lady on TV, the daughter of the EMS guy, saw the murder victim in the car. I mean, we have to address those issues psychologically, economically, sociologically, all those ways. It's a health issue. CDC pays money people, for people who work on conflict issues, to teach the skills, to help the people once they've experienced these things. Also, it's an economic issue, because businesses don't want to be in violent neighborhoods. Businesses don't hire people with records. Businesses don't want people who are violent in their business, you know, period, whether they started that way or got that way. So, also, our organization's been around me 30 years next year, and I've been with them for 16 of those years. And when I came on, Kevin and I were part of a bigger cooperative organization under the Housing Authority, and we saw a significant juvenile homicide rate of 90-some kids killing kids in the beginning of the organization go down to like 15. And that is a significant factor that we have to look at. One of the things, and I'm going to say it right here, is that part of that initiative was some of the kids got locked up that were doing nonviolent crimes. Well, 15 years later, they're out. They're adults. So if you look at the murder, crime, all that connection around the age of the people who are committing those crimes, you'll see that they're from that age group about 15 years ago. Now, you know, I'm bringing the issue up. Y'all know about this stuff. I don't have to tell you the details and statistics. But I am saying that you have to make the issue of conflict resolution a part of every aspect of what you do, because the rest of it is fluff after that. See, because the kids who get in trouble in school, Ben Richmond got us together, I can't remember how many years ago, maybe about 5 or 6 years ago, because he found out that a kid got kicked off, a 9-year-old got kicked off of a school bus, and he couldn't understand that. How you get suspended in the first grade off a school bus. Well, I understand it because I work with them kids. And much of what you all have said is absolutely on target. Our children who have the highest issues with conflict need the most attention. That whole idea of attention deficit is not necessarily what's going on inside their head, is that they're not getting the attention that they need as a human being. And we don't want to do that because it costs money. Yeah. Okay, so I wanted to bring that issue up for you all to think about.
I'm Craig. I work at the University of Louisville, and one of the skills that I've noticed from my students is their inability to critically think. And so one thing that I am able to tell the students, something that I always tell them, that if you agree with everything that I say, then you're not thinking. When students are able to critically think, they're able to have a more meaningful educational experience. And when they're able to insert their political or personal experience, then they're able to find their purpose. And when they're able to find their purpose, then that degree becomes more than just a degree, but it becomes something to where I'm able to bring honor to my family, or I'm able to do something that my family was not able to do. So I think that skill of critically thinking has to be something that has to be implemented in these policies, because I think a lot of times instructors are so reliant on that banking concept that Paulo Freire talks about, where instructors are always telling students to regurgitate facts. So when we don't make space for students to critically think, then we're doing a disservice to students, and we're also doing a disservice to where they're not able to find out what their purpose is or what they're supposed to be doing after they graduate.
Thank you so much. I have a powerful job in these breakout sessions and meeting rooms. I'm going to turn it back over to Senator Neal, who's going to close us out. You got it.
Thank you very much. What we're going to do now is, before we close out, it's going to be very brief. I've already violated one of my rules that I told you, and I feel deep shame as a result. And I'm not going to repeat this again. Right? Okay, I would like to allow we're fortunate to have the chairman of the Jefferson County Board of Education with us, and we'd like to let him make a comment that's relevant to the subject matter.
Thank you, Senator Neal. There are so many things and items discussed and thrown out. I can't, as a board member for JCPS, we need another 5 or 10 hours of this so we can discuss everything. I will say briefly, two real quick comments. Yes, I'm Lutheran, but it's not just Baptists and Methodists where there's been problems over the last 20, 30 years, a decline in numbers, etc., and society. But one thing is, and I've mentioned this to at least one board meeting before, we do need, and Dr. Holliday said yesterday, he made the comment, that we need to get to kids even before they get to us. We need to work with kids before. you know, there's a program called Success Maker. I've become a big fan of Success Maker. If we can somehow, I know there are license agreements, but we use it in our schools, if we can get it to daycares and to the churches and other faith-based groups. So these 3 and 4 and 5-year-olds, and believe it, they can learn. If these little kids can work a little game thing, they can work Success Maker and learn how to read and write and do a little bit of math. But overall,